Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of TED Talks Art. Today's topic is the power of personal experience. Now, I've mentioned on one occasion or more that since art is a very personal thing, not only in terms of what we're passionate about or what creatively speaking is satisfying or drives us, and different inspirations of artists and things like that. But more often than not, of course, it's also our personal experiences, both those that are related directly to art and things that are not necessarily related, at least not at face value. And that can come from anything from very personal events or milestones in your life, or the type of education, encounters with life situations and people, and everything in between, whether experienced firsthand or maybe as a spectator or in taking heed of the experiences of others, especially those that are close to us or those that we respect. And I think as I get older, I'm seeing how much that really does influence who we are both as artists and people. For example, since I did my undergrad in finance and economics, and as I've mentioned before, it was just not because it's something I wanted, but it just was something that was practical, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And beyond that, also is certain parental and cultural expectations that play into that. However, when I went to art school eventually and beyond that, I never thought that anything that I learned in undergrad, especially in finance and economics, would ever come to play. But the interesting thing, as I got older and when I started freelancing and as I started teaching, some of the hallmarks or principles of economics did come to play in my decision making, as well as my perspective on how I teach. And one that I've mentioned on more than one occasion is the principle of opportunity cost, where you're giving one thing or sacrificing one thing of value for another. So that's just one example where at face value, you wouldn't think finance and economics would have anything to do with my art career. But it's interesting how things change or our eyes are opened to different things. Maybe some more practical or direct application examples. One I like to give is the artist Masamune Shirow of Ghost in the Shell fame, the original manga. Now, if you look at his work, especially his designs for mechs and machines and cars and things like that in Ghost in the Shell and Appleseed, they're pretty amazing. They're pretty over the top, yet there's something about it that looks believable. His designs look as if they could work in real life, and you wonder, what is the reason why for that? Is he just doing a lot of referencing, or is it just the nature of his design just seems very grounded, even though it's very over the top, especially when you're dealing with walking mechs? But then if you dig deep, you'll find out that he has a background in mechanical engineering. So something like that, which is definitely design related, but we don't necessarily think right away applied to entertainment. But knowing that and then seeing his mech designs, it's like this light bulb. Oh, that makes sense then. No wonder his mechanical designs look so believable and look like they work, because they probably could work. His understanding of gears and hydraulics and everything else related to that is coming into play. Now, for myself, I think maybe a more direct example in my work would be my enjoyment of martial arts and martial arts films, and as well, I used to take martial arts. And I try to do what I can in my kicking bag in the basement once in a while. And that comes to play, not necessarily just obviously in subject matter and the things I design, but maybe even how hopefully I portray anything related to, even if it's very over the top, hopefully there's some sense of authenticity or accuracy, whether it's in the poses I place, or weaponry and how they're used, and so on and so forth. One example that really confirmed that was there was a client I had in the past, and more often than not, they tell me where they found me. If not, I'll ask them other questions just out of my own curiosity. And this particular client, I asked them, because they wanted specifically martial arts related character work, I asked them how he arrived at finding me or choosing me. And this client said that they had looked at a lot of different art, and they said when they looked at mine, even though more over the top designs and styles, looking at my work, he felt that I had some understanding of martial arts. And I said, oh, that's interesting that you say, because yes, I am a big fan of martial arts films, as well as I took Taekwondo and Wing Chun in the past. So it's very interesting how those kind of things, or life experiences, both direct and indirect, come into play in the choices we make, as well as our art itself. Now, I think other things that may come into play is even certainly what you enjoy. I mean, I think the most common example would be, as all of us in this sort of arena or industry tend to be big kids at heart, there were certain cartoons, toys, comics, films that we all grew up with that we loved as a child, and we still do today. And certainly that aspect is the most common thing that comes into play in terms of an artist's style and the subject matter, and even the fact that this is something they pursued and never grew out of. I think to take that further would be even perhaps your principles or your beliefs, and like for me, for example, you'll notice that my work is never gratuitous in violence or sexuality. I'll do action-oriented things. I'll do, characters with sex appeal, but I won't do anything very gratuitous. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, that's just not really what I'm about. I don't really like drawing those sort of things, particularly very ultra-violent things. And in these days, I'm actually even more conscious of it, almost as of a challenge. Like, given how much content is so violence related, but I still love action. So how can I portray some art or designs that still feel very exciting and have action in it, but not necessarily relying on weaponry, or certainly not, anything really over the top, especially as it relates to guns and things like that. The other reason is because I have kids, and I know younger people also look at my work. So that is something I am kind of conscious of as well. Not to the point that I make, G-rated, kid-friendly art. That's not my end goal, but that does come into play with the things that I do. And so that's an example of both childhood experiences, life experiences, and life stage changes, in this case now being a parent, that come into play, at least in my case, and how they influence my art and the decisions I make and where I place my time and effort in. Now, what I'm saying is probably nothing new. It's pretty common, but I think the reason I'm bringing it up is maybe the challenges for some of us, and at different times, that's more readily apparent or obvious than others. And I think that ties into something I talked about in the previous video about being true to who you are and what's authentic and you're passionate about, and that is more likely to stem towards any kind of success. But more importantly, because it is worth it to you personally. I think it's also similar in terms of how these personal experiences come to play, because they have to be authentic, they have to have made some impact, otherwise they won't really influence you. Now the trick is choosing ones that are positive, but even the ones that are negative, maybe arising out of an event that's negative, can be turned into positive. And more often than not, it's let's say with stories, And even if it's a sad story, it connects to the viewer, and that's a very positive thing, right? Whether it's a death in the family or some other kind of tragedy that comes their way, and it comes to all of us. And so I think that's also part of being aware and taking some time to kind of reflect and think about the things that you've experienced, both in the past and in the present, and things that are maybe just one-offs versus things that will have a great impact on the rest of your life. And I think that certainly kind of comes into play. That just reminds me of another example. Most of my characters, most of my subject matter tends to lean toward Asian, whether it's culture or ethnicity. And there's a couple ways to look at that. The first obvious one was, well, I'm Asian, so I relate to that. But I think more so that now that I'm older and how there's a lot more awareness about gender equality and diversity, that I feel even all the more, at least personally, for the push to do these kind of characters and not be apologetic about it, because it's, again, what I can relate to, but it's also what I enjoy. I think in the past it might be one of those things where, if you always do an Asian character and they're always doing martial arts, that perpetuates the stereotype. But, that doesn't really cut it for me anymore, at least. I think, stereotypes exist, and there's some pros and cons to that. Well, I mean, there's some truth to it, and if it's not done right, then it's a stereotype, and it doesn't help. But at the same time, I think it's more about retelling or a story, or showing something with accuracy and authenticity and something you can relate to that will outshine any kind of stereotype. Because that's like saying an Asian actor who avoids any role that requires martial arts out of fear of being typecast. Well, look at all these non-Asians that are doing all these action roles now, and they're studying and being trained in specific martial arts. So just by virtue of the fact they're not Asian, they escape that stereotype and get that opportunity. That's not very fair, and I think that's why I don't think any Asian needs to be apologetic. If you want to take on something that typically might be pulled into something as stereotypical, then own it, make it your own, make it relatable, and that's another way to break the stereotype as opposed to avoiding certain typecasting. So I'm unapologetic about making Asian characters and a lot of things related to martial arts, because I'm Asian and I like those things. So why should I apologize for it? It's the same for anything else. Just, should I not make Korean food? Should I not cook Asian food because I'm Asian? No, it's what you relate to, and it's what you enjoy, and that's the same for any other culture that all of you are part of, and the diversity of it, and what's so wonderful about it is we can embrace it and appreciate all of it. One more thing I wanted to expand on, actually, I just remembered, as it comes down to also your beliefs, or what you hold true to your heart, or principles. I think, again, related to that is, I feel very strongly about whether you're religious or not, but I believe that God gives us certain gifts and talents. It's actually biblical. There's a whole proverb about that. And we don't own these talents or skills. They are on loan from God, and as good stewards, it is our duty, our obligation, and also our privilege to use these things for the benefit of others, and while at the same time serving God through that. So that in itself is very comprehensive in terms of, for me anyway, in terms of why and how I do my art, why I teach, how I teach, and even doing these videos. It's not about this, I'm the greatest artist and I have so much to offer. First of all, I'm clearly not the greatest artist. There's so many out there. who are much more capable than I am. But it's more about not squandering the gifts, not squandering the blessings that have been given to you. You don't have to be religious to believe that, but I think personally I believe that's who we are and that's what we're created to be, and it is certainly would be a waste to have something to offer and not share it, because you never know what kind of impact you may make, and I think the world needs that, especially given how much negative and depressing news we get, or at least that's what the media shows us. God knows we need something a little more positive and edifying. So I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Hopefully that covers a broad spectrum of how your personal experiences come to play and impact, as I said, the choices you make as an artist, the art itself that you make, and both the indirect and direct consequences and things that come around related to those things. And hopefully it's always steered towards moving forward and evolving as artists and people, as well as making a positive impact to those around you, certainly among other artists and even those who aren't artists, because at the end of the day, this is art. What is the art community? It's part of the community, larger community at hand, and any kind of impact we can make both in and inside art circles in a positive way certainly is a good thing, and I don't think anyone could argue that. Okay, so I think that's it. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.